we would interview a soul, let's take John Muir. He's a Scottish guy. All of a sudden Sam would come through with this Scottish accent. I mean, she's West Coast. She works in financial services, and she would have no recollection really of these interviews afterward.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Spirits Beside Us. Today is going to be a special episode. Today, we're going to be looking into how spirit lives, what it's like to be on the other side. How do we converse with spirit? Can we converse with spirit? And so much more. So if you're going to learn what it's like to be on the other side directly from the spirits themselves, because today we've got a very special guest. His name is John Thomas. He and his wife work with a trance medium who channels the voices of spirit directly from the spirit world. And they've had great opportunities to speak with so many different souls, direct conversations from everybody like Teddy Roosevelt all the way to Albert Einstein and many, many more in between. And these people have offered some incredible wisdom, incredible messages from the beyond, not only about what it's like to transition, but also, what's happening in our world today. So with that, I want to welcome John. Welcome to the show.
Chris, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, this is going to be so interesting. The biggest question I'm sure that on everybody's mind is, what's it like to transition? What's it like to be a soul? What's it like in the spirit world? But before we even get to that, maybe you can kind of give us a sort of a quick glimpse as to how the soul began, because from what I understand, you're somebody who's been working with a trance medium who is basically the go-between who channels these messages from spirit. So how is it that you work with spirit?
So here's the short story. So myself, John Thomas, and Carolyn Thomas. Carolyn is the inspiration for the book. She's the author. She put it all together. And the channeler, Sam Larkin, listed on the book, is what we would call a voice channeler. I mean, I'm no expert on this stuff, but intuitive channelers are in the vein where you ask them a question, they contact the soul, they get a response, they tell it to you. They're kind of an in-between. In voice channeling, the way we define it, the soul actually enters into Sam Larkin's body, really takes over her persona, her vocal cords, everything. And the way the book was written was by having these dialogues with the souls through Sam. They were actually recorded. So on our website, channeledmessagesofhope.com, you can hear excerpts of these recordings. We have an audiobook as well that has all of the souls, their actual responses through Sam. What's remarkable is that when we would interview a soul, let's take John Muir. He's a Scottish guy. All of a sudden Sam would come through with this Scottish accent. I mean, she's West Coast. She works in financial services, and she would have no recollection really of these interviews afterwards. You talk to Nikola Tesla, there'd be this Eastern European flavor. But the way this whole thing started was Sam knew that she had this kind of intuitive talent, and she used it mostly in communicating with animals. And as we said before the podcast, she's not a professional in this area. She happened to get to know my wife, Carolyn, and when we had some problems with some cats in our home that weren't getting along well, so Carolyn asked, "Hey, Sam, can you check in on this and see what's going on?" And then later, Sam started getting some high vibration messages that were clearly intended for Carolyn. This is not something Sam normally does. Sam and Carolyn then got on a session to see if they could invoke the soul who was trying to bring in the messages. They did. That soul, an ascended master that we'll call Baba, had a special relationship with Carolyn built on past lives. So that started a dialogue. Then Carolyn said, well, wow, if we can contact souls in this way, maybe we can contact others. And Carolyn had an inspiration of maybe we could, here we are in 2 years ago when all this started, a divided country, all these problems. And I'm not saying we're going to solve all the problems, but Carolyn's thought was if I can get some messages of hope about where the future is going, anything to help people, maybe that would be a good application of this talent that Sam has, and we can put it all together. And so that's when she finally had that inspiration. Then they had one other call with this Baba entity. He said, well, that's actually our idea here on the council being what we surmise a group of ascended masters. And they said that the earth, the environment is in an especially troubled state right now, needs help. We want you to focus, this inspiration, your idea, which was their idea, on this topic. And so that is exactly how channel messages of hope, conversation with prominent souls about the environment. That's how it all came
Yeah.
in.
Oh, that's fascinating. So in these direct conversations with spirit, that they're literally taking over Sam's persona, using her body to actually create the voices with their accents and all. I imagine that in the beginning you were also finding out, what's it like to be spirit? What was it like to transition? What was it like to, what's the spirit world really like? And that seems to be one of the most pressing questions, one of the questions I get all the time. What's the spirit world really like? Were you able to ask questions like that and kind of start getting a description of and some feedback about, what they were telling you?
Well, we did. And I can tell you that from the very first interview, there's 19 in the book, we were not as skilled at asking those kinds of questions. We got better and better at it. But what we found, and we talked to souls about, how are you working with people on earth? What was the transition like? What are you doing on the other side? First of all, the first thing to know is there's nothing to be scared of at the transition time, because where we end up is a pure love environment. It really doesn't matter where you were at before you got there, but when you show up, there will be a greeting. There will be a lot of love. Different souls will have different people greeting them. For example, Rachel Carson, who, she wrote the book, she brought a lot of awareness to pesticides and things like that in her time on Earth. She had a horrible death, cancer. It was just really bad. When she transitioned, she said she was greeted by 1 million monarch butterflies,
Wow.
which, yeah, which we believe is an acknowledgement of what she did to help the earth. Whereas we can say G.W. Bush, President 41, the first Bush, the elder Bush, when he came over, he had lost a child very early. He was greeted by the child, family members, pets. I mean, it's a joyous experience. I will also tell you, though, that Samuel Clemens, why would we talk to Samuel Clemens? We talked to Samuel Clemens because Nikola Tesla told us to. Samuel Clemens was a very active investor in his early days. He was writing the Mark Twain novels and all of that. He was very interested in technology and investing. He got to know Nikola Tesla in the early days. We never would have talked to him unless in our sole interview, Tesla, hadn't told us to go talk to. That's a common thread in this book of how we got the souls we did. But Samuel Clemens has a particular interest when people transition over out of very violent situations, such as gun crime, let's say. He is there to greet them. That is his chosen thing. So
Hmm.
while we have chosen things on our side here on earth, the souls also have chosen things on their side.
Yeah.
And we have free will on our side, and they have a certain level of, interest in what they do on their side too, is what we found.
Wow, great. Did they offer some kind of understanding as to the different levels of the spirit world? Since it's commonly referred to as like the quote unquote 7 levels, and then there's levels beyond that. Did they talk about that, and how do people move between the different levels?
We didn't talk directly about that. What we did end up talking about was, are you coming back in a body? Are you there and you're going to stay? For instance, Samuel Clemens, back to him, said, I'm not coming back. I'm graduating. He seemed to be able to say. We would talk to St. Francis. I don't think we would have asked St. Francis that question, but I don't believe anyone is on the council, the ascended masters, without it. But here's a really interesting thing. we could talk to a soul. Here's our understanding at this point, Chris. We have a piece of source in us. We have a soul. We go to earth back and forth to learn those lessons, come back, have a life review, maybe come to some agreement, go back to earth. So let's take Albert Einstein, okay? His wife, Mileva Einstein. When we talked to Albert, which naturally we would, because this was a book about messages of hope for the environment, and Albert was talking to us about the 100% clean energy nuclear fusion. So when we asked Albert, well, who else should we talk to? He said, well, I'd like you to talk to Mileva. Mileva? Who's Mileva? Mileva Einstein was my wife when I was here on Earth. Not the whole time, they divorced, but when they were together, they had a child, Edward, that turned out to be schizophrenic. So Mileva Einstein, when we talked to her, we asked her directly, how many lifetimes have you had? She said 122.
Wow.
Are you in a life right now in a body on Earth? Yes, I am. Silence. Then she says, I'm a psychotherapist. I live in India. You can call me David, but I work with mentally challenged people in the same way. Just like,
Her son.
yeah, just like, yes. And like Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt. I have great admiration for him. I mean, this guy did so many things in a short life, by the way. He died in his 60 or early 60s. You know, he was police commissioner of New York. He was a president, the Rough Riders, all of
Yeah.
this stuff. He is now a monk in Kenya.
Really?
You say, why? Why would you be doing that? Because when he was here on this earth, he also liked to do a lot of hunting. Maybe he got entertainment out of bagging these animals, so to speak, things that, you know, for me, I would never do that. But I think he went back because he needed to learn a better appreciation for animal life.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And St. Francis told us one of the most key messages for me personally in the book is when St. Francis said, you know, around the environment or anything, we are all one. We are all connected. People, animals, nature, the
We're all the
earth.
same energy.
Yes, it's all the same. We're all connected. So one thing is going to affect the other thing. So that was a couple examples that really we didn't know enough. I have to say, Chris, we didn't know enough to ask, are you in right now uh, on the other side in this soul? Or do you also have another, you know, lifetime going on down on earth? We got very smart about that later. But the key, what brought it together for me is that there is a soul that has source in it. And that soul, you know, all these lifetimes are being worked so that we can try to come on this earth, learn something, come up, realize it, go back, relearn it. And for me personally, that was really outside the book. It started to make a lot of things make sense just for me in my own life. It's like, why do these things seem to be repeating themselves in my life? Aha, now
Ah,
I
yeah. Now
get
I know. Exactly. That's
it.
it. It's so interesting that you're mentioning that one point you're actually talking to the soul who's in the spirit world, but they're simultaneously having a life in the physical. So how is it that they can have an existence in the spirit world while simultaneously having a life in the physical? Did they explain that?
That's a very big question. And again, I am not an expert on any of this stuff. All I can do is like take my experiences and wrap them up. And my experience tells me that we, as sitting here, you and I are in this body in this lifetime, we have source in us,
Mhm.
but we also have a higher self. And so I don't know how many past lives I've had, and I don't know how many more I will have. I have a feeling I'll have more because there's lessons I realize now that maybe I haven't learned the way I need to.
Yep.
But if we have a higher self that is our soul, but yet we have these lifetimes that are happening, they all are cumulative in terms of the learning, in terms of the makeup for us. This is my belief system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will have learned certain lessons on this lifetime. I think I know what a lot of them are. Some I don't know. but I'll probably have to come back here and learn a few more.
122 more times.
Well, I mean, what's the magic number? We don't know.
We don't know.
I'll give you an example though. It's like here I'll just jump to this one. This is always a hot topic. Richard Nixon.
Oh, okay.
Why did you guys talk to Richard
Oh, you
Nixon?
did.
Well, we did. And the reason is that he was well ahead of the game environmentally. If you read his 1970 State of the Union speech, he's talking about reparations to the environment, water. I mean, he started the EPA. I mean, I'm an old guy. If you remember way back,
Yeah.
the smog in LA and all that stuff,
Yeah.
he started the EPA.
And he was a big nuclear proponent.
He was. But of course, he had his the failed ending with Watergate and all that.
Right.
That's all people really remember. But Carolyn, in doing her research, said, I think we need to talk to Richard Nixon. And so when we asked through Sam to invoke the soul of Richard Nixon, Carolyn was terrified. She didn't know what was going to happen here because we had run this by other souls in soul interviews. I don't know if it all made it into the book or not. Like Stephen Schneider, he was a kind of an advisor to politicians on environmental stuff. Anyway, when it got time to invoke or bring in Richard Nixon, there was a pause. He didn't come in immediately. Most of the other souls came in, like Theodore Roosevelt rode in on Cleo. Who's Cleo? Cleopatra was his favorite horse. In Sam's mind, she saw this guy on a horse entering. Richard Nixon came in very tentatively, very silent. And the first, Carolyn would always thank the soul if they're coming in. The first thing he said is, are you sure you want to be talking to me? And it was like, yes, it wasn't because of your notoriety with the Watergate and all that stuff. But anyway, what he told us was he's in a deep review, a long review, because when he was on this earth, he had a lot of, let me say, arrogance. I'm smarter than everyone else. Hubris, if I pronounce that correctly.
Yeah.
He was in a review of how to come back and be more compassionate, how to be more, kind of not that I win, everyone else loses way.
Yeah.
And that was probably going to be whatever lifetime he ends up having later. It'll have to do with probably that lesson. He was very upfront with it. One other example, I'll just give you two. Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan said that, I didn't really present my true self. I always was kind of hiding behind an image,
Well,
which kind of makes sense. I mean, he was an actor, right? Then he went into politics. He actually was pretty successful, but he said, being my authentic self is the lesson I am learning that, I need to do. I don't know what that will mean in any future lifetimes, but this is the kind of stuff, if you read through the book, for me, it was fascinating, I have to say. So we got better and better and better about asking the souls about how do you work with people on earth? What was your transition like? What is the lesson you're learning right now? And they were all very open. And I can say also I detected, I'm a Silicon Valley guy. I'm in tech in Silicon Valley. I know ego when I see it. Okay. So these souls had no ego
That's because
detectable.
when a spirit transitions, they leave not only the physical, but they leave the ego mind behind along with it, and all that's
Yes.
left is just a spiritual energy.
I see it completely the same way. So there's a couple stories for you.
That's great. You're describing transition. Were the souls you're speaking to able to describe their transition or what the transition process was like for them?
What we gathered is the transition process. It's almost like you cross over from kind of a foggy to a very clear. Like, I mentioned Rachel Carson previously with the Million Monarch Butterflies. You kind of come to in a sense.
Yeah.
And there you are, whether it's family members, whether, like in the case of Samuel Clemens, when people have gun violence, they're very confused when they come over. It's like, I was in a body, only like, what happened? You know?
Yeah.
Other people, they have a smoother transition. They either die in their sleep or whatever it might be. But Wayne Dyer, when he came over, he said that, when I finally, like, let me just use the word came to, it looked just like Maui. Well, he lived in Maui.
That's why.
For him, Maui was heaven.
Exactly.
Okay. And then later there was a paddle out. They call it a paddle out. I'm in Santa Cruz right now as we're recording this. A paddle out is when a whole bunch of surfers go out for some particular purpose. And somehow they all organized themselves in a way on the water, and it had a face that looked like Wayne Dyer. That was his gift. You guys can look it up.
Wow,
Look it up.
that's so funny. Yeah, and that's what I hear so many times is that you know people who have crossed over describe it in such a way that they look at the physical life as the dream, the nightmare, the chaotic, bad sleep. And then when they transition over, it's like, oh, I'm awake. Boy, that was a really bad dream. I didn't really want to deal. I'm like, I feel so much better now, right?
But that's what we got too. I mean, first of all, the main message for any listener here is to not fear the transition.
Mm.
It's only better on the other side. It's a pure love environment. I've had a couple dreams myself over time where I felt almost like I was in that environment. It's the most comfortable feeling I've ever felt in a dream state. Okay. So that tells me don't be scared of that. There's nothing to be scared of. I mean, here on earth, we invent many things. Okay. We invent heaven and hell and all this stuff. I don't know any of it, what's true. I only know what I hear. But I do believe when the transition happens and you get to the other side, it's going to be a love environment. And if bad things happen when you are on earth, you will have a chance probably to come back and atone for those, I think. But yeah, I mean, we heard a lot of very interesting stories on that, and they were all consistent. And here's the other thing that maybe I can mention, Chris, if I can. It's like, well, how does the other side interact with us here?
Yeah, yeah. How do I? What do
That
they say?
so here's a concept, the concept of guides.
Hmm.
Okay. So
Yep.
there are people on the other side, everybody, all of us have them that are looking out for us. Um, if we, like, for instance, when we were going through all these interviews, Theodore Roosevelt, and we started talking about the concept of guides, what the souls told us is any of us can be a guide to you. We may naturally be a guide. There's some connection there, or you can ask us to be a guide directly. All we have to do in our meditation, in our prayers, is ask souls that we feel could help us to be a guide. It's not like they have, well, I only have 1,000. I can't accept any more. It's not like that. There's no tariff. Okay. So you can ask anyone that you feel, if there's a vibrational match, they will be your guide. I know for a fact Wayne Dyer, St. Francis, Nikola Tesla, and others are my guides. Why? Because I meditated. I asked them. And the way they communicate with us and the way they guide us, we have free will here. We can do what we will do. But if we want the guides will influence us in ways such as maybe, we have that aha moment. Carolyn told me just the other night, this week, I had this dream with John McCain. John McCain, I have great admiration for John McCain. This is not a political statement. It's just I respect him as a man. She said, he came to me in my dream and the dream kept going. And then I woke up and then I went back to sleep and the dream kept going exactly as it was. John McCain was there. John McCain is in the book. John McCain is a great man. He's the maverick. He, whether you like him or not, he did things because he felt they were right.
Right.
And that's the kind of people that, we like to hang around with.
That's the interesting thing. You bring up spirit guides, and spirit guides are so, everybody says, well, how do I connect with my spirit guides? Why can't I hear my spirit guides? But it's always, they are always connecting with you, but they're more like the silent advisor. Everybody expects them to kind of be yelling in your ear or banging you over the head. But to your point, they can't, because it's universal law that they cannot interfere with our free will. They can only give us the silent advice when we're open to it and we're asking for it.
Right. They are like advisors. Do we
Yeah.
always take the advice of our advisors? Do I always
No.
buy the stock my guy says to buy? I mean, not always, but they are there to be on our team. Listen, I look at my own life, okay, and I look at like a few things that have happened repeatedly, and I'm like, yeah, that was a lesson I should have learned. And sometimes in my ear, I heard a little bit like, John, this, you keep going. This one may get you in trouble, and
Or so often it's that gut instinct that we just think, oh, it's our natural instinct talking, but it's so subtle that our conscious mind is yapping all the time and it yaps all over it. So we may have heard it for a split second, but we ignore it because we're paying attention to the loud, obnoxious monkey mind. And so we just go on our merry way and stumble on our face when we should have listened to what was being said.
well, there's that. And then there's some times where we say, wow, how did that happen? How did that thing line up in a way that
Yeah.
got me to a conclusion I really liked? Okay, maybe it could be random, could be coincidence, could be
Right.
maybe there was some direction going on to put a few things in our path in an influential way.
But
We
we all know,
can't say
we all know there's no such thing as coincidence. It's always synchronicity where things
correct.
line up.
There is, as Baba told Carolyn, there is a reason for everything.
Everything.
It also doesn't mean that our life is predetermined to be a certain way, because we do have free will. So the free will combined with the influences around us will, I think, this is my belief, will kind of come together into whatever direction we end up going down. And
Yeah.
it's really fascinating, when you put all
Yeah.
that.
The analogy I use is it's like you're the executive in the office, right? And you've got this advisor who can't say anything, but he's waiting outside the door with his arms crossed, tapping his foot, waiting for you to acknowledge him. And when you finally acknowledge him, they'll walk in and he'll whisper in your ear and turn around and go out. But you have to invite him in and ask for that advice because you got to pay attention to the advice.
Well, you have to be open and
Yeah.
open and aware. Even like this book, this book is for people spiritually open, spiritually aware, spiritually curious, that also happen to have some, they want to know where environmentally things are going. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so
So,
that's really the demographic.
well, yeah. So what was what were these spirits saying about what's going on in the planet, what's going on with humanity? What were they either warning or directing or suggesting we should be doing?
Right. So the first thing we realize, and when you look at the table of contents, you see all these different names. They're actually different categories. We have policymakers, we have preservationists, conservationists, we have technologists, we have spiritual leaders. That's how it evolved. It didn't start that way.
Mm.
It came out that way because when we started getting into the interviews and they started asking us who should we talk to next, that's where it came from. We got suggestions about who to talk to.
Oh,
But
okay.
what really struck me, if you go to the spiritual leader side, let's say you go to the St. Francis side, Wayne Dyer, their point of view is, look, the earth is angry. The earth, mankind is not treating each other well. You guys have all this divisiveness. You have all these, you know, they didn't use the word wars and things like that, but there's all this contention. And that contention means people are not treating each other well. They are not treating each other as equals. St. Francis would tell us we are all one, mankind, nature, the earth, the environment, all this stuff. We are one. And Wayne Dyer would say that the earth is rebelling because she doesn't like the way not only the earth is being treated, but the way mankind is treating us. So what we see then is we get extremes on weather. We get extreme drought. We get extreme, flooding, all that stuff. We are getting extremes. When you go to the conservationists and preservationists and the policymakers would tell you, look, what's going on with the earth is real. So you got to get with the people that are making laws and follow the money, and create incentives to treat this earth better. The preservationists and conservationists, like Jacques Cousteau, is just a really amazing interview where, all the plastics that are going on in our world that are ending up in the oceans and ending up actually in us. There's a lot of stuff there in that interview about, what we can do. But let me just make one point, because one of the big ones is like, well, what about the climate deniers? What about the people that say, oh, it's just weather? It's just weather. Well, in a sense, we can say it is just weather. But if you look at the history of the earth, you can spot this, uh, let me say, uh, the climate change has a cycle, ice house to greenhouse. Okay. But that cycle is 10,000 years. That allows the earth to be able to maintain some sort of balance, even though the environment is shifting. It's almost like, let's say you have one of those weekends where you have too many big and rich meals and all this stuff, and you wake up on Monday and go, oh God, here we go. It's because you are out of balance.
Right.
And so we do things naturally to put ourselves back in balance. Maybe we'll eat better that day, we get some exercise or whatever. The thing with the earth, though, this 10,000-year cycle, we have been pushed into the greenhouse state only over the last 150 years because of the industrial age. So all the fossil fuels that have burned, all of the greenhouse gas that has been emitted has been so much, so fast, that the earth is having trouble maintaining balance. And we see that in the way that we get different climate changes going on in different areas, either extreme drought or extreme flooding, things like that. The main message for the climate deniers is, let's give our earth a chance to get back into balance. And by the way, you need some level of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. You can't have zero or we'd be spaced.
Right.
But when we put too much in, we trap too much heat, and the natural cycle of oceans absorbing heat or the ice caps, during the night, and then we go into day, it gets way out of balance. And then we get the situation we see here. So a lot of the clean, renewable, these are all not bad things. There's no reason to be scared of any of this stuff. We're just giving our earth a chance to regain balance as the population grows, mind you, pumping out a lot more of these things that can get in the way of balance. So that's a very long-winded answer, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity. We're just trying to give our earth a chance. We can show our earth respect. And listen, if you if you at night you say, thank you, my kids are healthy and everything, well, thank the environment too.
Yeah.
Thank the earth. Thank nature. All of these things are connected.
Well, that's what's so interesting. There's also, I was talking about on a prior podcast about, how do we get back into sort of like a self-care mode? One of the most important ways you can do that is literally walking in nature. Why walking in nature? Because it is already absorbing all of your energy. It's already a neutral energy that will cycle the energy. It gives you energy. It gives you grounding energy. So if you can't enable what would be referred to as Mother Earth, if you can't, maintain that, then you're not going to be able to ground. You're not going to be able to give yourself any self-care.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And like, think of it this way, like back to St. Francis, we're all one. That tree, I can tell you, people will say I'm a crackpot or whatever. That tree is communicating around it,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
in a slower way, in a
It
different
communicates
way.
with all of the other trees around it. Yeah, they're having conversations. I mean, scientists have shown it. Like when one
Yeah.
tree is in distress, it sends out signals to all the other trees. I forget exactly what wavelength or what, but they triggered it. They found it. They saw it. There's like something's happening. It's warning all the other trees.
Yes, exactly. So nature has a soul. The oceans have a soul. Mother Earth has a soul. I have a soul, Chris, you have a soul. We're human beings living here, and the animals. We are all connected. And if I'll tell you what, John Muir said it really well. He said, look, if you treat the environment the way you treat churches, be really well ahead of the game. People walk into church, oh, I'm revered, I'm in the church, and you're not throwing your soda bottle on the side of the thing.
Yeah,
it's
right.
like it's like if you had that attitude, that would be a really good place to start. Then St. Francis, we are one. Wayne Dyer talking to us about the earth is like upset about the way mankind treats each other. And so we're seeing some of the results of this. It kind of, for me anyway, it kind of all connects.
Yeah, totally. When we're thinking about reaching out, did Spirit give any indication as to, you know, ways that people can better connect with Spirit, whether that's their guides or deceased loved ones or just Spirit in general? Were they giving him any indications how they can strengthen spiritual connections?
And I'm not an expert here. Okay. I'm not a pastor or anything. I'm just a guy that worked on this book. But here's what I've learned. The spirits will connect with you as much as you are willing to connect with them. So people talk a lot about meditation. Sometimes I wonder how many books about meditation have been written and read, but the meditation is actually very simple
Hmm.
in what I've learned. And all you have to do is stop, try as best as you can to stop your mind, open it up to listening. And if there's a particular spirit that you would really like to connect to, just say that at the start of the meditation. Say, St. Francis, I would really love if you were to be my guide. I'm having particular issues here and there, and or Wayne Dyer or Theodore Roosevelt or Nikola Tesla. Any of the souls on the other side are out there and available. What I also found out through the book and the others is we have many guides we don't even know. And we can't ask every guide. It's not like we
Hmm.
have an
Hmm.
application form or something like that. There's ones that are naturally following us,
Yeah.
helping us. But where we actually feel we could use, some real help and some real benefit, those guides are available to us if all we have to do is ask. It's
Right.
just that simple.
It's all about intention. That's one of the biggest
Yeah.
things that I've always
Yeah.
come to learn is that where you set your intention is what you actually create in your reality. It's just intention. And
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, you can't necessarily quiet the mind per se. I mean, that's kind of like the misnomer about meditation because everybody says, "Well, I can't quiet my mind." Well, if your mind went silent, you'd be dead.
Well, that's true. Yeah. There is that.
So you have to sort of take that with a grain of salt. The concept you're getting at, which is quite accurate, is where you're actually talking about: are you able to quiet the monkey mind, the loud conscious mind, to the point where it's not as obnoxious, it's not as in your face. If you get a thought, let it come in, acknowledge it, but don't interact with it. Don't absorb with it. It's like the train's coming into the station. Don't get on the train. Let it go.
As best we can. That's a really good way to put it. I mean,
Yeah.
I find that the longer you try this meditation thing, the easier it gets to quiet the mind because sometimes, you just get out of it. I go, "Oh, yeah, I feel better. I stopped myself." I mean,
Yeah.
I run a startup here in Silicon Valley. There's no shortage of things that can flood my mind with
Yeah.
disasters at any
Exactly.
one time. But sometimes, I just got to stop. Got to stop. I got to listen. I got to try to listen. I'm no better than anyone else at trying to do that, but at least I know that if I can get to that point, there are benefits to doing that. And it's respect for those that are guides for me, that I've asked to be guides for me, that I stop enough to try to absorb something from the outside. That's really all we can do. We're
Yeah.
just people.
That's all you can do. Yeah. Now, the big, question becomes, oh, well, yeah, I'm sure there are probably skeptics out there thinking, oh, well, this doesn't make any sense. How could you possibly be talking to all these famous people? Why is it always the famous people that you have to talk about? What would you say to the skeptics who are thinking either A, I don't believe you're talking to all the famous people, or that you're making it all up? What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say a couple things to them. First of all, the people that were chosen, the souls that were chosen for this book, were because they had particular influences in their time in a body on Earth related to our topic of the environment. And they were notable, they were listened to. So, of course, we would be interested in what they had to say. When it comes to convincing people that like you really connected with them, you really channeled them, you know, we're not here to convince anybody. We are absolutely not here to convince anybody. If you are a skeptic in that regard, this book's not for you.
Yeah.
If you're spiritually open, spiritually curious, concerned about the environment, then this is the book for you. And the only reason Carolyn wanted even to write this book originally was to make sure that those people in that demographic, especially right now on book one, concerned about the environment, have some place to go where they can get some reassurance or some insight or some other spiritually oriented content that will help them. But listen, I personally am not here to convince the climate deniers, that this isn't just weather. It's like if that's all you want to do and that's all the research you're willing to do, then you're not the demographic.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you're someone that says, "Oh, I don't believe all this channeling BS. None of this is real," you know what? You're not our demographic either.
Right.
Wayne Dyer told us early on, if you write a book for everyone, you write a book for no
No
one.
one. Yep. Yep.
So, all we can do, we're just little people here trying to do our part.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. And I commend Carolyn for coming up with the idea. As you know, Chris, it's an immense effort to get a book published. It's a massive effort. And we're not here to try to make a bunch of money with this thing. We're just here to try to say, hey, if you need these messages, if this will help you, if you're spiritually open, curious, and concerned about the environment, there's something here for you. And if we can get that in their hands, we have an audiobook now also, which is really interesting because it actually has the recordings. We did the recordings through Sam on Zoom. You can hear the actual interviews with the souls, including their accents and the whole thing. It's
So,
all on the
so you've
audio.
got Richard Nixon going, I don't talk like this.
Well, he didn't exactly say that, but yes, in a sense, yes. But I'll tell you what, if you go from like, John Muir to Nixon to Reagan to St. Francis, he was Italian and everything. I find that part of it remarkable. I have to.
Exactly. Or, well, if you're going to talk with Reagan, you're just going to be talking with this kind of intonation. God,
I grew up in the Reagan era. I know
yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. That's why you can imagine I was sitting there going, whoa, what's going on here?
Oh, that's got to be hilarious. Just listening to those voices. That alone is worth the price of admission.
I would just say, when we did the written book and that got out, then we are like the audio book. It's like, how we can do the audio book? Do we get professional narrators for this? No, I didn't want professional narrators. We want the souls in their recordings as recorded. Our audio guy, Jason, he cleaned it all up so it's super clear.
Yeah.
So all you get is that voice. And it is,
Uh,
I mean, I wish everyone had time to listen to the audiobook because I know that they would be fascinated. You don't get it in the same way from the written
no,
as you
no,
do
not
from
at
the
all. Yeah,
audio.
'cause I know there are certain deep trance mediums, like April Crawford. When she goes into her trance, her whole night is her body and persona change, but her voice just goes radically different. And I'm in trance circles, and some of the people around us who we go into trance, some of them they're no longer themselves. It's the sound in their voice. It's just they couldn't make it. Like all of a sudden, a man's voice comes out. You're like, what? Wait a second, you're a woman. How do we get a man's voice out of that?
I mean, I know what you're saying. I mean, like with Sam, I mean, she had no idea because she'd never done,
Yeah.
voice channeling of anyone else. She was like an animal communicator. And then when we broached this idea and she said she'd try it. And then when we did the first couple, I mean, like, some English accent coming out of her. She's a West Coast person working in finance. I mean, she's like, I'm the California guy. So yeah, I hear what you're saying there, Chris. It is really, it
And,
really
that's
stops you.
yeah, and yeah, it does stop you when that happens. You're like, "Oh my gosh, Toto's not in Kansas anymore."
Pretty much, pretty
Oh,
much.
this is awesome. Great. I'm so thankful for you coming on over, John, and talking about this. This is fascinating. If you were to have one piece of advice for a listener who, was in front of you, what would you give?
Well, let's say that listener is concerned with the environment. Okay. All I would say is this: acknowledge that we are all one. We are all connected. We're connected to nature. We're connected to the earth. We're connected to each other. And look, if we could all do one thing, okay, let's say for the next 30 days, I said, I'm not going to litter anything. And if I see a piece of litter, I will pick it up and put it away. If we just did that, imagine, like you might recall post pandemic, what happened in Beijing and Shanghai, the worst polluted cities on our planet.
Hmm.
They cleaned up.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we can all stop driving cars and everything, but what it says is that our earth and our nature and ourselves are resilient, and we can recover from things if we get the proper treatment and we get the proper behavior and the proper respect. So all I would say is know that all are one, respect those around you. Maybe as John Muir said, let's treat this environment as a church as best we can. And I think we'd be way ahead of the game.
Yeah, so well said. I think that's great. Well, wonderful, John. Thanks again for sharing your experience and coming over. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, and I would invite everyone that's interested in this. I mean, we do have a website, www.channeledmessagesofhope.com. You can find the written or the audio. You can find snippets of the audio on that website. And, if you're interested, we invite everyone in.
Great, great. Well, wonderful. Well, John, thanks so much, and thanks everybody for listening to the show. And we'll be sure to get all the great information, about the book, about John, about the audiobook. You got to hear the audiobook; it's probably going to be phenomenal. And everything out there, get all that in the notes. And we were talking about meditation, and if you're trying to struggle with meditation, by all means, start working with that. We've got a link on our website about how you start working with your meditation. So just look at montclairmedium.com. In the meantime, if you like what you've been hearing so far, like and subscribe. That way you'll never miss another episode. Drops every Wednesday. So with that, I will sign off and we'll see you next Wednesday. This is Chris signing off, sending you love and light. Until then, next time. Bye bye.